Hi, DSAH family. This is Kim Torres, your Executive Director, and I am here with our Lunch and Learn Empowerment Through Education Workshop series. Today we will be doing part 2 of our Love and Empowerment, How to Empower Your Child with Down Syndrome While Maintaining Your Guiding Role workshop. Hey Jack, thanks for joining in. Last week we talked about the concepts of problem solving and decision making. If you missed out on those discussions, you can find our video here scrolling down through our videos on Facebook. You can also look us up on YouTube where we have all of our videos posted as well. Today we're going to discuss 3 more concepts of how to empower your child or adult with Down syndrome at home. We will discuss decision making, goal setting, and self-awareness. All right, you ready? I got my notes here, so I'm cheating if you were wondering what I'm looking at down there. So the first concept we're going to talk about today is decision making. And decision making is defined as choosing between unlimited choices. Last week we talked about choice making, which is the choice between A or B. Do you want a ham sandwich or peanut butter and jelly? That's making a choice. This expands upon this. This expands upon choice making to unlimited options. Decision making, as research will show, is pretty hard for all of us as human beings when presented unlimited options. So it's going to be an extremely hard skill for our loved ones with Down syndrome to master. But my suggestions would be to start small. If your kiddo is young, start with that choice making, choosing between A and B or 1 and 2. And then as they get better at making choices, expand the number of choices that they have available to them. So instead of 2 choices, maybe there would be 3 or 4 choices. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you can do full-fledged decision-making practice with your kiddo with Down syndrome. And for me, this started with, and this is not just for my kiddo with Down syndrome, this is my typically developing child as well. This started with articulating how I make decisions in my life out loud. So all of that internal metacognition that you do in your head when you're trying to make a decision moving forward, you want to do it out loud and using terminology that your kiddos can understand. So an example of this is where are we going to go on vacation? We've been talking about vacation a lot lately because I think everybody in our house is tired of being in our house. And so one of the things that I can do to help with that decision-making process is to take this enormous amount of options that we have available to us and talk my kiddos through how I'm going to narrow them down, okay? So we have an unlimited options. We could go to Kazakhstan. We could go to walk around all of Europe. But we're going to narrow those choices down because 1, I don't have the money to walk all around Europe, and 2, I don't really care to go to Kazakhstan at this moment in my life. And so we're going to narrow down those options until we have a list of maybe a finite number of options, 3, 4, 5 places that we might be interested in going on vacation. And I'm going to talk my kiddo through how I narrow that list of infinite options down into a small finite list in order to make a choice. Again, this is going to be a very, very hard skill for our kids with Down syndrome to master. The key here is to teach them how you are going to make a decision, and then over time, they'll be able to help in that process. Hi, Nelsie. Hi, Elvira. Thanks for joining me. Next, when we're teaching empowerment, we definitely want to teach goal setting. This is probably my favorite skill to teach, and we've been really successful with this in our Education for Life program for adults with Down syndrome. Goal setting is defined as the ability to set appropriate goals for oneself and to achieve those goals through actions. Okay, so I recently set this goal to run a marathon. I ran one at the age of 30, and now I've set a goal to run one at the age of 40. And so the goal is to run 26.2 miles, and I am going to set objectives and train for it and put effort into it so that I can achieve that goal. Before we talk about our individuals with Down syndrome, goal setting is empowering to all human beings. And so we want to make sure that our children and adults with Down syndrome have that same opportunity to set their own individual goals. Some of you may think it's crazy to run 26.2 miles, but once I set the goal, it's kind of empowering to me to think, okay, I've got to work towards this in order to be able to achieve it. And I find myself practicing running on Saturday mornings and buying new running shoes and thinking about running and reading running blogs and putting effort into achieving that goal. It doesn't have to be something as big as running a marathon. It could be like sometimes I set a goal to clean up the playroom. And so then I get excited that, okay, this playroom could be clean. I could put all the toys away. And then I work towards getting that achieved. For what we've done in Education for Life, again, which is our program for adults with Down syndrome, you should definitely check it out on our webpage if you haven't. It's a top-notch day program here in Houston. What we've done is we have taught them how to create their own goals. And this is true for even our adults that are nonverbal. We've worked with them to figure out what it is that they want out of life at this moment in time. What is the skill that they personally want? And here's what we found out of this. First, these adults are the pride that comes out of creating their own goal and working towards it is unlike anything we've ever seen with parent-provided goals or provider goals. It's part of the reasoning behind why so many advocacy organizations encourage you to bring your kid to their IEP meeting and let them participate in the process of creating goals. Because when we create the goal for ourselves, it's something we want to do instead of something being demanded upon us. If, let's say, my husband required that I run a marathon, I probably wouldn't be as excited about running those 26.2 miles. But because it's a goal that I've set that I want to do, I'm more encouraged to do it. So we helped all of our adults create goals for themselves. Some of these goals, one of my favorites is we have a participant that wants to be able to make change and figure out what her bill is so that she can go out to dinner and not have to sit with her parents and be able to pay for the meal all by herself. And so she's really motivated by learning how to make change and add and subtract money because she really wants to not sit with her parents at dinner one night. We have other adults that, it's being able to spell out certain words that they've had trouble with their whole life so that they can fill out a form without their parents' help has been really motivating for them. Typically, a lot of times the motivation comes from not wanting their parents' help on certain things. And like, I want to be able to do this by myself. And therefore, we really encourage these adults and your children as well to create their own goals and to work towards them. What you will find is that goals that are self-initiated that we work harder towards. And a warm, fuzzy moment for us in the Education for Life program was when we went from parent-provider goals. When we had parent-provider goals, we had a lot of adults that would try very hard not to participate in the academic time needed to reach those goals. When we went to participant-created goals, where the adults created their own goals, we now have them begging for more time to work on their goals. We now have them saying, oh, can we start lunch 10 minutes late so we can get an extra 10 minutes of working on goals? We don't have wanderers around the building. We have people completely engaged in meeting their goals. Key point here, though, is once the goal is met, you have to move on to a new goal. If you keep spoon feeding that same goal until they reach perfection, then it's not motivating anymore. If we use my marathon running example, my goal is to just complete the thing. If someone kept making me run in order to get a certain time at it, then I would lose my motivation as well. So once the participant or your child reaches the goal that they have set, move on to something else. All right, our last one, and I guess this is also one of my favorite ones, is self-awareness. Self-awareness is a skill that we definitely have to teach our individuals with Down syndrome so that they are aware of their own individuality, their own strengths, and their own weaknesses. And usually when I give this presentation in person, this is the one skill that gets the most questions. Parents ask, so you're telling me that I should teach my kid how they're unique and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are? And I say yes. And many, many, many professionals will tell you that it is instrumental that we do that for our kids. I always like to take the Down syndrome out of the equation and take just you or me as our typical selves and think, do we know how to define our unique abilities? Do we know how to define our strengths and our weaknesses? And most of us, we can. I know that, one of my strengths is I'm very hard-headed about change and very go active, proactive. We're going to change the world. But I also know that one of my weaknesses is when everything doesn't work out just as planned, I need to vent about it out loud for a little bit to 3 or 4 people, and then I calm back down and can keep going. So these are things that I need to know about myself so that I can work with them and around them. Our kids with Down syndrome need to know those same things. And so the first question that parents ask, or the second question they ask is, so you mean I need to tell my kid they have Down syndrome? And the answer is yes. Your kid needs to know they have Down syndrome. What age that is at that they learn they have Down syndrome is unique to each one of your families and fits in where you are in your life. But they need to be able to understand that they have a unique need. They need to be self-aware of their unique need, and they need to know that it's okay. So my son, who's 9, we're at a phase now where I can ask him, do you have Down syndrome? And he says, yes. And I said, is it okay? And he's like, yes. And that's about all we get. He knows he has it. He's okay with it. And we move forward. I am positive that as he gets older and he sees that there's things he struggles at more than his sister and his friends, that he's going to have more questions. And those are going to be times for me to expand upon defining his strengths and his weaknesses. Because having Down syndrome means you innately have strengths and weaknesses. We all know their ability to be joyful is a strength that supersedes many of our abilities to be joyful. And we want to make sure we're defining that for our adults. As a former teacher, I'll tell you that the kiddos and adults that I worked with that were aware, they had self-awareness of their disability, were more empowered, and they had more pride in who they were as of themselves. They were okay with that defining factor, what their disability was. Whereas it was oftentimes confusing for adults that didn't understand that they had Down syndrome or autism or ADHD. They didn't know how to define it, and they didn't know how to work with it in life. And so I am personally a big proponent to teaching self-awareness about our strengths and our weaknesses. Okay, so wrapping up, we have finished our 2-part workshop series on how to empower your child with special needs while maintaining your guiding light. So you're not just like empowering to go off on their own. You're going to be there to help them through these processes along the way. And to gain this independence, we've talked about 5 skills that are inherently important to be teaching at home and through your kiddos' IEPs at school. Choice making, problem solving, decision making, goal setting, and self-awareness. So again, these will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I encourage you to look at both of them again. Make sure these skills are embedded into their school day, into their home life, and let's raise these kiddos and adults to be the most empowered individuals with Down syndrome we can get them to be. If you have any questions, go to www.dsah.org and find us in the Contact Us session. All right, have a great weekend. You won't see me live until, you won't see me live till next Tuesday. All right, bye.